Some stories keep you up at night. Others make you triple-check your locks. And then there's this one. It starts the way so many do. A missing girl. 16-year-old Miranda Corsette. Another runaway. Another statistic. At least, that's what the police thought. But let me tell you something. Miranda didn't just disappear. She was swallowed whole by something much darker. She walked into a house in St. Petersburg, Florida, on Valentine's Day, and never walked out. What happened inside those walls? It's the kind of horror you hope only exists in movies. But this was real. Now, if you've ever made a bad Tinder choice, take comfort in this. At least you're still here to swipe left on the next one. Miranda wasn't so lucky. Her final match led her straight into the hands of a couple straight out of a horror film. Steven Gress, Michelle Brandes. They weren't your average couple. No cute matching pajamas, no Sunday brunches, just a shared hobby, cruelty. On the outside they looked, well, normal enough. But behind closed doors, they weren't partners in love. They were partners in something much worse. And Miranda, she never stood a chance. She thought she was staying with new friends, a place to crash, a place to escape. Instead, she became a prisoner. For 4 days, Miranda suffered. And on the 5th, she was gone. But here's where it gets worse. They didn't just kill her. They erased her. Now, if that sounds like something straight out of a crime show, let me assure you, it was messier, dumber, and yet horrifyingly real. These two, Gress and Brandes, they weren't criminal masterminds. They weren't Hannibal Lecter. They weren't even Diet Hannibal Lecter. But somehow, they almost got away with it. Almost. Because just when it seemed like Miranda would be forgotten, someone talked. And that's when it all unraveled. This is the story of Miranda Corsette, the girl who never came home. Miranda Corsette was used to running. It was what she knew, what she did best. But this time, she ran straight into the arms of a predator. Miranda's life was never easy. She wasn't just another rebellious teenager sneaking out at night for fun. She was a survivor. An orphan at a young age, Miranda had no mother or father to tuck her in at night. No loving home to call her own. Instead, she had her grandmother, a woman who did the best she could, but raising a troubled teen alone. It's never simple. She was homeschooled, kept close, but even the tightest grip couldn't hold her in place. She had her struggles, mental health battles, substance abuse issues, a history of running away when things got too hard. But here's the thing about Miranda. She always came back. Always. Until now. February 14th, Valentine's Day. A day meant for love, for gifts, for happiness. But for Miranda, it was the day she met Steven Gress. A message, a match, a promise of something better. Steven was 35. Miranda was just 16, and yet, in the twisted world of online dating, that didn't seem to matter. He told her what she wanted to hear, that she was special, that she was safe, that he had a place for her to stay. She said yes, and from that moment on, her fate was sealed. Steven Gress and Michelle Brandes. A couple that, on the surface, seemed normal. But let's be real. People like them never look like monsters at first glance. Steven had a past, a dark one, violence, drugs, a temper that could turn deadly in seconds. And Michelle, she wasn't innocent either. She wasn't just the woman standing by his side. She was part of the act, the bait, the proof that their home was safe, that Miranda wasn't walking into danger. But the moment that front door shut behind her, she was already trapped. Now, if this was some kind of twisted fairy tale, maybe Miranda would have realized something was off. Maybe she would have spotted the red flags, the warning signs. Maybe she would have run. But this wasn't a fairy tale. and by the time Miranda realized the truth, it was already too late. For 10 days, Miranda stayed inside that house. Maybe she thought she had control. Maybe she believed she could leave whenever she wanted. But the walls started to close in. The atmosphere turned tense, and when something valuable went missing, a piece of jewelry, small and insignificant, Steven and Michelle's true colors bled through. The punishment? Days of torment, beatings, control. Until eventually, there was no more Miranda left to hurt. She was gone. A dating app, a match, a message. And just like that, Miranda Corsette's fate was sealed. Ah, dating apps, a modern convenience, or, if you're unlucky, a fast pass to your own murder. Miranda wasn't the first teenager to fall for an online stranger, and she sure as hell wouldn't be the last. But for her, it started on Valentine's Day, February 14th, a day filled with chocolate, roses, and, apparently, predatory men twice her age. Steven Gress, 35 years old, a man who shouldn't have even been in the same algorithmic universe as a 16-year-old girl. And yet, here he was, sending messages, making promises, saying all the right things. Come over, I have a place for you. And just like that, she said yes. Miranda stepped out of the car and walked into Steven's house in St. Petersburg, Florida. A normal-looking home, nothing unusual, nothing that screamed run. She went in, spent the night. And the next day, she came back. This time, to stay. Now, if Miranda had any idea what was coming, she probably would have turned right around and sprinted out of that house like her life depended on it. Because, well, it did. Steven wasn't alone. There was also Michelle Brandes, 37 years old, his girlfriend, his accomplice, his partner in something much, much darker than love. At first, Miranda probably felt safe, maybe even wanted. Steven and Michelle knew exactly how to play their part. A warm meal, a place to sleep, maybe even a little affection. But make no mistake, this wasn't kindness. This was a trap. And Miranda Corsette had just walked straight into it. Did they offer her drugs, alcohol, a high that blurred the edges of reality just enough to keep her there? Or maybe it wasn't that complicated. Maybe all they had to do was be nice to her. Because when you're young, broken, desperate, sometimes just the illusion of love is enough. But then something went wrong. Something small, insignificant. A piece of jewelry. That's all it took. One missing object. One accusation. And suddenly, Miranda wasn't a guest anymore. Miranda Corsette had been living on borrowed time from the moment she walked into that house. And now, that time had run out. February 20th, 5 days after Miranda Corsette stepped into that house in St. Petersburg. And by now, she wasn't a guest anymore. Something was missing. A necklace, a bracelet, a ring. Doesn't really matter what it was. What mattered was that Steven Gress and Michelle Brandes decided Miranda took it. And what started as an accusation quickly turned into something else entirely. Because these two? They weren't the let's talk this out like rational adults type. Number. They were the let's turn this into a 4-day-long nightmare type. Miranda didn't get the chance to explain. Didn't get the chance to say she didn't take anything. That maybe, just maybe, they had lost it themselves. Because the second they decided she was guilty, the punishment had already begun. From February 20th to February 24th, Miranda Corsette endured a brutality that's almost too horrifying to imagine. Almost. Beaten, held against her will. Possibly starved, maybe drugged, left in a room with no escape, no help, and no way out except through them. For 4 days, she suffered. Now this is usually the part where people start asking, why didn't she fight back? And the answer is simple. You can't fight back when you're already too broken to move. And trust me, Steven and Michelle, they made sure of that. But torture, it can't last forever. Not when there's only one way left to end it. February 24th, the last day of Miranda Corsette's life. Whether she died from her injuries or was suffocated, only her killers truly know. But what they did next, that was even more disturbing. Let's talk about what happens after the murder. Because see, most people, when they panic, they call someone, they cry, they think about running. But Steven Gress, he picked up a saw. And what happened next was something out of a horror movie. Step 1, get rid of the body. Step 2, make sure no one ever finds it. Simple, right? Wrong. Because instead of doing literally anything else, Gress loaded Miranda Corsette's body into his car and drove straight to Largo, to the home of Michelle Brandes's mother. Now, this raises an interesting question. Did Brandes's mother know what was happening under her roof? Or was she just the world's most unfortunate Airbnb host? Either way, she was about to have a very, very bad day. Because inside that house, Gress got to work. And if you're wondering how someone goes about cutting up a body, congratulations, you have a healthier brain than Steven Gress. Here's what we know. Miranda Corsette's remains were dismembered in that house. Limbs, torso, head, all separated with the kind of precision that suggests one of two things. Either Gress was just really, really determined, or this wasn't his first time. And now he had a problem. Because once you cut a body into pieces, you still have to get rid of them. Which is how we get to our next location. A dumpster. Somewhere across county lines, somewhere far enough that, in his mind, no one would ever connect it back to him. He dumped Miranda's remains like they were nothing. Like she wasn't a person. Like she was just garbage. But bodies don't stay hidden forever. And Steven Gress was about to learn that the hard way. February 24th, 2024. Somewhere in Florida, an old woman picks up the phone. She dials a number she's dialed too many times before. On the other end, a tired dispatcher picks up. Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. What's your emergency? My granddaughter's missing. And for a moment, nothing happens. Here's the thing about missing persons reports. They don't all get the same response. Because when a sweet little honor student goes missing, full-scale investigation. When a troubled teen with a history of running away disappears, she'll be back in a few days. That's what they told Miranda's grandmother. Another runaway, another case for the back burner. But this time, Miranda wasn't coming home. Meanwhile, somewhere in Largo, a man named Steven Gress was trying to figure out how to sleep at night. Because when you dump a body, it doesn't just disappear. And when people start asking questions, it gets a little harder to breathe. Which is why, on March 5th, Gress found himself in police custody. Not for murder, not for dismemberment, but for something way dumber. Ladies and gentlemen, the man was arrested for trying to pawn a harpoon. A harpoon, like he was about to go spearfishing for whales. Oh, and drugs, because of course. So there he is, sitting in a cell, probably wondering how his life got to this point. And just as he's settling in, someone walks through the door with an interesting question. Hey, Steve, you wouldn't happen to know anything about a missing girl, would you? March 6th, a witness comes forward. And suddenly, this isn't just a missing persons case anymore. Because this witness, they don't just think something happened to Miranda. They know. And just like that, the case cracks wide open. March 8th, a woman walks into a police station. Her name? Michelle Brandes. And she's here to turn herself in. The charge? First-degree murder. But here's the thing. Miranda's remains, still missing. And without a body, justice is a tricky thing to find. Here's the thing about murder cases. They don't always end when the cuffs click shut. Some of them linger. Some of them fester. And some, they leave behind a wound that never really heals. Because even with the arrests, even with the confessions, even with all the gruesome details spelled out in black and white, there's still one thing missing: Miranda's body. And without a body, her family isn't just grieving. They're waiting. Waiting for a call that might never come. Waiting for a grave to visit. Waiting to say goodbye. Authorities have searched. They've combed through dumpsters. They've scoured landfills. They've followed every whisper, every lead, every rumor that might point them toward Miranda's final resting place. And still, nothing. It's like she vanished into thin air. But we know that's not true, don't we? Steven Gress knows where she is. Michelle Brandes knows where she is. But neither of them are talking. Not fully, not truthfully. Because the difference between a body and a case file, one of them gets buried. The other one? It stays open. March 2024, Gress and Brandes stand before a judge. The charges: first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, destruction of evidence. The reality? A case with more questions than answers. Because without a body, the defense has room to maneuver. Without a body, there's just enough doubt to chip away at justice. But let's be honest, no one's buying it. Because outside that courtroom, people are angry, people are watching, and people are demanding something that's starting to feel impossible. Justice. Miranda's family, her friends, complete strangers who only know her name from the news. They all want the same thing: answers, closure, a place to lay flowers instead of questions. But until Miranda's body is found, this isn't just a crime story. It's a warning. Because monsters don't just lurk in the shadows. Sometimes they walk among us. Sometimes they smile in our faces. And sometimes they take something that can never be given back. But justice? Justice doesn't give up so easily. Miranda Corsette was more than a victim. She was someone's daughter, someone's granddaughter, someone's friend. She was supposed to grow up, to chase her dreams, to have awkward first dates, make bad decisions, and laugh about them years later. Instead, she became another name in a long list of those taken too soon. Another case of manipulation, of cruelty, of unchecked violence that thrived in the shadows until it didn't. And now, here we are, sitting in the aftermath, piecing together a story that should have never been written in the first place. The justice system has done its part, or at least what it can. Arrests were made. Charges were filed. But let's be honest, does it really feel like enough? And that's where you come in. Because this isn't just a crime story. It's a conversation. It's a warning. It's a reminder that cases like this don't exist in a vacuum. What do you think? Should dating apps do more to protect vulnerable users? Should the justice system crack down harder on repeat offenders like Gress? Should accomplices face the same weight of the law as the ones who pull the trigger, or in this case, wield the knife? Let's discuss it in the comments. Because silence. Silence is how stories like this keep repeating themselves. And if you found this case shocking, if you want more deep dives into chilling true crime stories that keep you up at night, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because trust me, you don't want to miss what we're uncovering next.